So hi, everyone. My name is Piper. And next slide. There we go. There I am. And I've been with Ezoic for the last 6 years. In fact, Monday was my 6-year anniversary. And I know a lot of you are probably wondering, what's a millennial doing at one company for so long? That's very rare, right? But it's been a really exciting ride. If I were to tell my 22-year-old self that I would be on stage at Google presenting after ESPN, I probably wouldn't have believed myself. But I've experienced some pretty cool things at Ezoic. I've seen the company grow from about 8 employees when I joined to about 120 now, with offices all around the world. We started with a handful of publishers. I think one of our original publishers is here, Timelines, there you are. And now we have over 3,000 active publishers on the platform. So it's been really exciting. And on top of that, the online space is intriguing because it's constantly changing. So we've seen new ad types come into play, like video outstream and native ad types. We've seen new ways of spreading your content and reaching your audience. And we've seen new emerging technologies like header bidding and exchange bidding. And one of the most recent changes to the industry is Google's change to a first price auction, which was rolled out last month. Who here is familiar with this change? All right, a few of you. So I would say that this has been one of the most talked about topics for many of the publishers that I work with and many publishers in the industry who want to understand how this change is going to affect them. So while the full effects of this change won't be known for a while, we do think we have an idea of how it's going to impact publishers. But before getting into that, I want to take a look at some of the history leading up to this change in the programmatic industry. So let's start with the basics. What is a first price auction? So in a first price auction, all of the advertisers submit their bids, and the advertiser with the highest bid wins. Very straightforward. This is what most independent exchanges use, but Google felt that advertisers were initially bidding far higher than the market value, and consequently were lowering their bids, meaning that publishers weren't making as much. So in an attempt to establish a fair market value, Google switched to a second price auction. So in the second price auction, all of the advertisers submit their bids. The advertiser with the highest bid wins, but they only pay 1 cent more than the second highest bidder. So in this case, advertiser 1 still wins, but they only have to pay $2.51. So let's take a look at what happens when both of these auctions run against each other. So here we have OpenX running a first price auction. Advertiser 1 wins the bid with a $3 CPM. Then within Google's ad exchange, advertiser 1 still wins, but their bid is reduced to $2.51. So when they go up against each other, the $3 CPM bid wins. So in this case, we have a situation where an advertiser was willing to spend $5 on that impression, but due to the nature of a second price auction, they ended up losing to a $3 bid. So Google's way of preventing this was to introduce what's called last look. So last look is where Google would wait for all of the other exchanges to submit their bids and then give themselves one final opportunity to outbid the other bidders. So by having the last look, Google simply had to bid 1 cent higher than the winning bid to win that impression. So in this case, $3.01. Google was able to do this because they controlled the ad server, but publishers and advertisers weren't happy because this gave a huge advantage to Google because they were the only exchange that got to bid on every single impression. So to bring more competition to programmatic auctions and take the auction outside of Google, a lot of publishers started adopting header bidding. I'm sure most of you are familiar with header bidding, right? Okay, so header bidding is also known as pre-bidding, and it happens in the header of the site, hence the name. And it's a programmatic technique where publishers offer their inventory to multiple exchanges at the same time before making a call to the ad server. So this gave publishers more transparency. It also gave them more control over who they were selling to. And it also increased the competition for their inventory by opening it up to more partners, helping them increase the yield. So the point of going through that history is just to show everyone how complex the programmatic landscape had become. There's different auction types, different technologies, different yield optimizations for each. And now we've fully transitioned to a unified first price auction. So what this means is Google has abandoned their last look. Google's ad exchange is now using a first price auction. So all of the ad exchanges will submit their bids in real time in one auction, and the highest bid wins. Now there's a few main goals for this. One, it's going to add a layer of standardization to the bidding process. So before, if you were an advertiser, you had one bidding strategy if you're going through a first price auction, and then you had another bidding strategy for the second price auction. Now this is going to simplify things. Two, this should increase the amount of competition for publishers because it's opening it up to more exchanges and SSPs. And three, the idea is to create more transparency for everyone involved. So with this change, the question is, how is this going, the question becomes, what is the value of adding additional demand sources now? So here's the way that we see it. With the move to a first price auction, investing extra time or resources in adding additional demand partners is going to significantly diminish. Header bidding, while still important, is only in the context of a few reliable partners with unique demand. So if you're optimizing Google properly and you have a few solid header bidding partners, then you're pretty much good to go on the demand side of things, and the effect of adding additional partners is marginal. So the question becomes, what now is important, and where should you as a publisher be focusing your efforts? So we all know that quality is important, and it always has been. And we've had a few people up here today already speak about having high quality content. But when it comes to monetization, where should you be focusing your efforts if you want to increase your ad revenue? A lot of people think that the secret to high revenue is having good demand, but there's no amount of good demand that will supplement poor quality ad inventory. So what you should be focusing on is improving the quality of your ad inventory. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's take a look from an advertiser's perspective. As an advertiser, you are buying the user of the attention of the user. So what this means is you want the users to be engaged, you want them to be viewing the ads, clicking on the ads, and ultimately you want to get an ROI from your campaign. The principle of supply and demand comes into effect when we start looking at how ads impact the way that advertisers adjust their bids over time. And so the goal is to improve the quality of your ad inventory to help drive up the price that advertisers are willing to pay. So when we talk about quality ad inventory, we're really talking about two things. The first is having valuable ad space or prime real estate on your site. And the second is having an engaged audience. When you have these two things together, it makes everyone happy. Now we have users who are having a better experience. They're more engaged with the ads and the content. We have advertisers who are willing to spend more on the valuable ad space and the engaged audience. And you as a publisher are making more money. So I would assume that you would be happier as well. Best of all, this is something that you have complete control over, and it's the one thing that you can do to improve your ad revenue. So let's take a look at a few examples of how the quality of your ad inventory can be impacted. So in this first example, we have a publisher who has a couple of ads on their site, and they're making decent money, but they want to increase their revenue. So they decide to add a few more ads to their site. At first, this publisher is probably going to make more money. But over time, the advertisers who were originally bidding on the site will realize that they're not getting the same ROI as they were before. And why is this? Well, remember that advertisers are buying users' attention, And now that there's more ads on the page, they have to compete with other ads for the attention of that user. So the overall quality of the ad inventory on that site has gone down, meaning that all of the advertisers reduce their bids and that publisher is probably making less money long term. So this is an example of over monetization. And the result of this is devaluing the ad space over the long term by showing too many ads that dilute one another. Now let's take a look at the same situation, but in reverse. So here we have a publisher showing one ad at the top, one in the sidebar, and one at the bottom of the page. And let's see what happens when they remove the ad at the bottom of the page. So at first, the publisher is going to make less money, but that ad at the bottom of the page probably wasn't getting much engagement. It probably wasn't viewed as often as the other ads on the page. And so it's likely that the advertiser who is bidding on that impression was already reducing their bids to compensate for the loss in ROI. But if that advertiser still wants to bid on this audience, they're now going to have to bid for the ad at the top of the page or the ad in the top of the sidebar. Those two locations are more valuable because they have higher engagement, better viewability, better click-through rates. So now that advertiser is going to need to bid higher than they were before and also higher than all the other advertisers competing for those two spaces. So when this happens, we have all the advertisers competing, driving up the competition, improving the quality of the ad inventory, and helping the publisher earn more long term. So as you can see, improving the quality of the ad inventory increases the competition between advertisers, drives up the prices they're willing to spend, and helps you earn more as a publisher. We're looking at things in very simplified terms, but this is how the real-time bidding protocol works, and advertisers are adjusting their bids in real time based on the value that they receive for every impression. In reality, is adding more ads to your website always detrimental to the quality of your ad inventory? No. Is removing ads always beneficial in improving the quality of your ad inventory? Also no. And the reason is because all users are engaging differently. So we're going to take a look at a site that was able to improve the quality of their ad inventory and how they did it. So this site is using Ezoic's platform, which is doing most of these optimizations automatically. But many of the ideas that we're going to discuss can be applied manually as a starting point. So we're comparing the time period of, let's see here, July 2nd through August 5th compared to March 20th through May 6th. Over this time period, all user experience metrics improved. Revenue went up by 27%, and the EPMV, or amount that this publisher earned for every visitor to the site, went up 25%. So your first thought might be, well, maybe it's due to ad rates. Ad rates are constantly fluctuating based on seasonality, time of year, advertising budgets. Even events like the Super Bowl or the elections can increase ad rates. But what we see using the ad revenue index is that the time period that saw the improvement actually had lower ad rates overall compared to the time period before. So it wasn't due to ad rates. Your next thought might be, well, maybe it's better or more demand partners. Here what we see is that the total number of impressions only increased by 1.85%. So it wasn't that more ads were being shown. And while header bidding did increase, the overall impact was very low. So we see that header bidding made up less than 3% of the total impressions and less than 2% of the total revenue. We also see that Google's ad exchange made up 90% of the impressions and that the RPM significantly increased, meaning that the advertisers were getting more for their impressions after improving the quality of the ad inventory. So if it's not ad rates and it's not better or more demand partners, how was this publisher able to do this? So this is the equation we're trying to solve for. We know that we want to end up with high quality ad inventory, but we need to figure out the other two variables. The first part of the equation is the things that you as a publisher have control over. These are the ad sizes, the locations, and the number of ads per page on the site. All of these variables can be adjusted to improve the quality of the ad inventory, but we need to figure out what is the optimal combination. So the final variable in the equation is visitor segmentation. The most common pitfall for many publishers is thinking that all users are exactly the same. The truth of the matter is all users are different, and I'll probably say that 3 or 4 more times throughout this presentation, so hopefully that sinks in. But visitor segmentation is the #1 way that you can understand how different segments of your users behave on the site, and then use that data to make decisions about how to adjust those 3 variables. So as a publisher, you actually have a lot of data at your fingertips that you can use today to understand this. Some of these data points are the landing pages that your users are landing on, or what device they're browsing on, or where they're located, or what traffic source they're coming from, time of day, day of week, etc. So we'll look into some of these metrics in a bit, but I highly encourage everyone to go and take a look at their own user data to see if they can spot similar patterns. So once we understand how the users are engaging, then we can use that information to go in and adjust the ad sizes, locations, and number of ads. So let's start with the ad locations. So remember that advertisers are buying users' attention. So as long as the user is engaged and the ad isn't being diluted from all the other ads on the page, then it's highly likely that that given ad space will be valuable to the advertiser. However, not all your users engage with the site the same way. Some users come to a page, get the information that they want, and then skedaddle. Other users come to the site, scroll deeper within the content, maybe navigate throughout the site, and view multiple pages. So what we can do is we can use visitor segmentation to profile each of these. So in this case, we're looking at scroll percentage by traffic source. And what we find is that users coming directly to the site, so typing it in, end up scrolling 90% of the way down the page. Whereas users coming from Facebook only engage with the top 50% of the page. So using this data, what we could do is we could make a smart decision about where to show ads on the page. For users that are coming directly to the site and scrolling 90% of the way down, we can show more ads within the content, which is going to improve the overall quality of the ad inventory, while also preventing dilution from too many ads at the top. For users coming from Facebook, who only scroll 50% of the page, showing ads further down the page might actually have a negative impact on the quality of the ad inventory because those users aren't actually engaging with that section of the site. So let's go back to our example and what we see comparing these 2 time periods. The above the fold ad units, so under the page title, under the first paragraph, under the second paragraph, all went down, meaning these ad locations weren't shown as often, but the overall revenue and RPM continued to go up. And here we see that the in-content ad units, so the ones further down the page, increased, meaning they were shown more often, helping contribute to the overall increase in revenue. So Ezoic's system was able to identify which users engage with which section of the site and then show the ads in those given locations to improve the overall quality of the ad inventory and increase the revenue. So by simply changing the ad location for different visitors, you can improve the quality of your ad inventory. Now let's take a look at ad density. So many publishers have a set number of ads per page that they show to every user on every page. As I mentioned, all users are different. And in this case, you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table, and you're also possibly having a negative impact on the quality of your ad inventory. So let's look at why. Here's another visitor segmentation, this time looking at new versus returning users. So the new users are in blue, returning users are in red. And this is the page engagement rate, and it's broken down by word count or article length. So what we can see is that returning users are much more engaged with the site, especially on longer form content. So we can use this data to possibly increase the number of ads that we show to returning users because we know that they're more engaged. It's not going to impact their user experience. And remember, advertisers want their ads to be shown to users who are engaged. But for the other users, the new users, it might make sense to reduce the number of ads since they aren't engaging as much with the site. So many people think that the only way to increase revenue is to show more ads on the site. But what we saw is that the total number of impressions only went up slightly, so 1.85%, but revenue went up 27%. Looking into the data, what we see is that the number of pages showing 6, 5, and 3 ads decreased, but the number of pages showing 7, 4, and 2 ads increased. So what this means is that for users that have a higher tolerance or are more engaged, they can support slightly more ads to help improve the revenue, while other users who might not be as engaged will be shown fewer ads. So the secret to increasing revenue is really understanding your users and then adjusting the variables that you have control over to improve the quality of your ad inventory. At the end of the day, it's not just the ad size, and it's not just the ad location, and it's not just the density of ads. It's actually all of these things combined. And we looked at visitor segmentation from a very high level, but the key is actually to get as granular as possible so that you can customize the experience for every user. Now, this approach isn't anything new. In fact, advertisers have been doing this forever. When a user lands on a page and a bidding is initiated between advertisers, those advertisers are already taking into account that ad size, the ad location, the number of ads on that page, the viewability, the performance history of that ad, as well as all of the user metrics. So where is this user coming from? What are their demographics? Are they male or female? What's their browsing history? Where are they located? What time of day it is? What device are they on? So advertisers aren't making these decisions based on what they think is right. They're actually using thousands of data points to make the best decision about every impression for every user. So now we have to ask, why aren't publishers doing the same thing? Publishers are showing the same number of ads, same size ads, same locations of ads to every user. Is it because publishers are too focused on the demand side of things? As we've shown, you can invest all your time and effort into adding more demand partners, but it's never going to have the impact on revenue that you'll get from improving the quality of your ad inventory. So, what should you as a publisher be focusing on? Focus on what's going to help you achieve the best results long term. Focus on what you can control, and focus on improving the quality of your ad inventory. That's it.